Hello, my favorite audience. Today, we will figure out everything about leads, and that's exactly what we need right now. We will figure out everything in 20 minutes because we have an amazing guest today. His name is Mark Osborne. He's #1 best-selling author on B2B marketing and sales, fractional CMO, VP Growth Strategy Analytics. Mark is an influential communicator, relationships builder, and team leader with hands-on experience researching markets and decision makers. The man we needed. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Anton. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you much for being with us. So the first question is usually like, we like to ask people who work with the leads, who work in B2B, and you have a lot of experience. And this is why I want to ask you, like, how do you see the future of B2B marketing evolving, especially with the rapid advancements in technology? And what's the biggest changes you personally experience? Because you have a lot of those.
That's right. So that's a really interesting question. And in fact, it sort of underpinned what prompted us to write the book. So been working in the space for more than 20 years, and there were a number of pretty major trends that were sort of trucking along and making an impact, but moving like a trend does, kind of slowly. When the COVID-19 lockdowns happened during the pandemic, we actually saw that a lot of companies saw that as sort of like a pause button. So whatever they had been doing, they kind of put it on pause, maybe did something else a little bit differently. But what we saw is that the best companies really sort of leaned in on some of these trends. And what we saw, McKinsey Consulting actually says that the pandemic lockdowns accelerated trends by as much as 10 years in less than 10 months. So a lot of things that were sort of moving along that people were adapting to really changed the landscape. And so now we see that 70% of the buyer's journey in B2B is completed before they ever engage with the salesperson at a vendor, any salesperson at all. Whereas, not that long ago, it was really sort of common for a large buyer to reach out to 2 or 3 of the top providers in the marketplace, ask them about the criteria that they should be using to evaluate options, ask them about other solution providers they should look into. Whereas now so much of that journey is done that the brands that really haven't embraced this new landscape and this new change are really being left behind. And that's what sort of prompted us to write the book, Are Your Leads Killing Your Business? Because what we found is that those brands, those B2B marketers that hadn't adapted to these changes, they're being left with sort of the table scraps. Only the leads that the other more advanced competitors are leaving behind. And those leads are really killing their business because those wind up being companies that require a lot of customization, a lot of custom work. They oftentimes aren't aligned with your product and buying vision where you see the sort of marketplace going. And as a result, because they're not aligned with your vision, they ask for discounts, they don't renew, they don't provide referrals, they don't provide testimonials, and it really creates this death spiral where when those are the only leads that you can bring into your business, and that's who you're forced to work with, it pulls you further and further behind your competitors who are working with companies that are aligned with your vision for the product. They are willing to be an advocate for you in the marketplace and give you testimonials and referrals. They are aligned with paying what the product is worth because they understand the real value of it. And so that's really what prompted sort of the underpinnings of the book. And I think that's where it's going, to sort of circle that back to your question of, where is this heading? More sort of technology empowered solutions for buyers, which means that sellers need to embrace the solutions that technology sort of provides for them and the sort of insights they can get from data. However, the big distraction, what will sort of separate the winners from the losers in this space, is those folks that are able to see with a strategic lens, what is it that they're really trying to solve for, and then build systems against those sort of fundamental approaches to marketing, rather than getting distracted by, a new vendor that's got a new silver bullet that's going to guarantee to bring you all the leads you need in order to survive, or some new data, or some new way to game the algorithm, some new growth hack. Those are all distractions. It's really the companies that are able to understand the strategic landscape, build systems around that, and then bring in the technology and data that enhances those systems. Those are going to be the real winners in the future landscape.
And guys, I would advise you to think about what Mark just said every time you get an offer with super cheap leads from a shady company, because, well, trust your marketing expert, trust your marketing department, trust those guys. They know what you're doing. Well, most of them, but still trust those. Don't follow those topics, like cheapest leads ever, like $20 leads, something like that. No, they don't exist. So the book is called Are Your Leads Killing Your Business? It has been #1 bestseller in multiple Amazon categories. What inspired you to write the book, and what are some takeaways from your book that businesses can immediately implement? Because you understand, what do we want to do right now? Before we make a decision, we need to understand what kind of solutions are offered, because we need to understand how to differentiate between the good leads and the bad leads. And what's can you give us a sneak peek of what's going on there in the book?
Absolutely. So the book really sort of gives a framework that we've built over 20 years of working with companies in the sort of SaaS technology and B2B services space. And it is very much adapted to companies that are dealing with sort of long sales cycles, complex buying committees for large average contracts. So if that's not your sort of business context, it might not be as perfectly suited to you as maybe some other books, but that's really who it's written for. And what I've seen is that companies that are dealing with that have very similar challenges. And so it starts with really understanding who you're going after, so that you can sort of craft differentiated positioning. And so the best practices that we see in the systems that sort of create that type of framework is building out an ideal customer profile for both tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So all three of those, not just both. And then really understanding not only the firmographics that describe those companies, but also what is the context that sent them to market. And that's a really unique difference that a lot of companies forget when building out an ideal customer profile, is what was the context and what ultimately led them to choose your solution instead of a competitor's. And it can't be price. You have to find out what it was other than price that really drove that. And then going a step deeper into the actual people, the decision makers within those companies, and building out personas or avatars, whatever you want to call them, for that sort of decision maker and champion. And again, going beyond just sort of demographic descriptions of who they are, and really getting into the psychographics of what was their personal win? What was their professional win? Why was it that they chose your solution? What was it that sort of helped them align with you? And so starting with that understanding of the marketplace, or really the customer, and then moving to an understanding of the competitive landscape, picking your 5 best competitors or sort of biggest substitutes, and really looking at what are key points of parity where you match with them, and it's sort of an expectation for the marketplace, versus key points of differentiation, both their differentiation and your differentiation, and aligning on how are you really different in a way that's compelling, that aligns with your long-term product and buying vision, where the market is heading 2 to 3 years from now. And sort of taking that insight about the customer, what they're looking for, and that insight about the competitive landscape, and then your understanding of your company to craft a really differentiated positioning strategy. That's what then attracts the right customers to you, so that you're generating demand while creating awareness. And that's what really will bring in the right prospects to you, so that you're not just left with the table scraps. You're not just saying me too and competing with the rest of the category, but really being differentiated. And that is sort of the key to bring in the right volume of the right quality of leads in order to achieve your business objectives.
So every scientific approach starts with the framework, and it seems what we get in here with the book. And I wanted you to elaborate on a couple of things, because every time we have a product, any type of product or service, we always think about how amazing it is and everybody going to like it because we like it. We know things about it, right? others might not. So can you elaborate on the importance of other things like understanding the customer, competitive landscape, and the company's unique capabilities for a powerful positioning strategy? Because you started talking about it, and I'm sure our audience is really interested in that, especially when they have conversations with their like top management. And it's sometimes it's really hard to prove your point. So could you help us with that?
Absolutely. And in fact, I have a free training video that I've put together where I really go deep into how does this process work for developing a positioning strategy. And I talk about it more in the book. And in fact, so for all of your listeners, or actually the first 50 that go to modernrevenuestrategies.com/free download, I'll provide a free download of the book. And then in a follow-up email, I'll provide a link to a video where I spend more than an hour really breaking apart how to craft this differentiated positioning strategy for your business. But just as I was saying before, it starts with understanding your customer, understanding the competitive landscape. And oftentimes as part of that analysis, we'll do sort of visual representations, and we'll build kind of a matrix of, well, what are the two primary criteria that people use to evaluate a solution in the marketplace. So one might be, ease of use. So on one side you have really easy to use, and on the other side you have not as easy to use. And then the other might be sort of sophistication. So maybe it's underlying technology or all of the bells and whistles, and you might have very streamlined versus very sophisticated at the top. And so maybe those are criteria in your marketplace, and you can start to plot where are different competitors on this axis of these two most important criteria. And you might even create 2 or 3 of these sort of plots against multiple different criteria that are really important to your marketplace. And just by making that visual representation, you start to sort of see and understand where there might be white space, and there might be an opportunity to move your brand into some white space that then can sort of support new product innovation, so sort of expand your ownership of that white space, the messaging strategy that you take out to the marketplace, where you really speak to why you are different in this way, and sort of creating more space and a higher wall and a deeper moat around your brand as it pertains to sort of owning this white space. And then there's a very streamlined formula in the book around sort of developing a positioning strategy, which talks about sort of who you serve from a very detailed niche perspective, the sort of relevant competitive set that people might compare you to in terms of types of products, why you are the only solution that can do something through the lens of your unique differentiators, and then what are the reasons to believe. So what's the scientific evidence, or maybe it's even emotional evidence, but what evidence do you have that they can believe that your claim of sort of why you're best, or best for a particular niche within that sort of landscape. And that really serves as a North Star to guide all of your messaging strategy as you go to market.
I think this could be a great advice to any startup or emerging businesses in any type of field. But we know, for example, there are Fortune 500 companies, and you work with them. And a lot of people think, oh, they're perfect. They don't need anything else. Like, they have no problems, but they have challenges too. And I'm just interested, is there some kind of common challenges that Fortune 500 companies have, and what do you usually do with them? Because it's probably a huge company, right? It's hard to do something, hard to implement things. And so what's the common challenges, and what do you usually do there?
Sure. So you're right. And thanks for mentioning that. I've been really blessed in my career to work with, some of the best brands in the world. I've done partnerships with Meta, Facebook, and Instagram, as well as Google, with different companies, and worked with General Motors, Hulu, Nike. And the thing that has been, sort of surprising is, and this actually comes back to that idea of systems. So for these large companies that are so complex and have so many moving parts, it's really easy to get distracted by a particular initiative or a particular, new technology or new data or new analytical, sort of framework. But that's the same challenge that I see happen to small companies. They get distracted by a new growth hack or some new platform or some new way to game some algorithm, and they're not thinking about sort of a really strategic approach to the marketplace and a system that's repeatable and scalable for growth. And so for large companies, it tends to be around, sort of not really thinking about, is the juice worth the squeeze? So at the end of the day, they might spend, months and months building a solution that isn't actually making a big impact on their business once it's finally deployed. Because someone got sort of excited about the potential of this type of solution, but they didn't think through from a systems perspective, well, even if it works as good as it could work, what's the real impact it's going to make on our business? Can we extend that to every brand, every product, every division that we work with? And if not, maybe it's not where we should be spending resources.
Sounds a lot like, sorry for interrupting, sounds like Facebook VR.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's a lot of debate on that, but it depends on sort of your ability to understand how it fits into an overall system. That's really the differentiators between those companies that see real success from these sort of large scale solutions and deployments versus those that are just kind of distracted by it.
All right, let's go the other way. I've seen that you participated in USC's Marshall School of Business's Summer Startup Incubator, and incubator is always fascinating. People have incredible ideas. People have so many passion. So what kind of common problems do you see there? And can you share some insights about incubators? Because a lot of people who want to start a business, want to participate there, maybe have some tips.
Yeah, for sure. So I found the experience to be really, really enlightening and really helpful. I tend to be one of those people that I have no shortage of ideas or enthusiasm about it, but to really sort of, put the deal into place, you need a lot of sort of underlying systems and some blocking and tackling. And I actually, will credit my MBA from USC as a lot of what sort of guided that systems-based thinking on how to approach, business problems and marketing, not as alchemy that, you sprinkle fairy dust and now suddenly you have a brand strategy that makes people beat a path to your door, but instead it's a system that can be scaled and repeated. But some of the things that, I learned that, I would encourage people to pursue the opportunity to learn, whether it's through an incubator or some of the courses that exist, is really sort of understanding the fundamentals of your cash flow, because that's one of the primary things that drives success or failure for early stage companies, is the ability to manage cash flow and to accurately predict. And so having not just sort of pie in the sky estimations of, well, if we can convert 30% of the people that visit our website, and then half of those can double their investment with us over the course of 12 months, and each of those brings in 5 referrals, you have to start with some assumptions and some plugs. But sort of starting with really unrealistic ones is really sort of a recipe for disaster. That's why oftentimes it's helpful to bring in some external resources. One of the things we do at Modern Revenue Strategies is help companies have benchmarks of, well, what does good look like? What should we look for in terms of our customer acquisition cost or our lifetime value of a customer, or even sort of what percentage of our leads should come from referrals versus other channels. And so having some solid benchmarks for your industry can be really valuable, and that's something that you can get from participation in an incubator or working with some other external experts. And then again, it's this sort of really disciplined approach to systems where you're tracking weekly metrics, and those are metrics that the whole company sort of centers around. So it's not just a vanity metric where marketing can say, well, we hit our lead targets. I don't know why your revenues aren't what they should be. Sales, that sounds like a sales problem, not a marketing problem. Really bringing everyone together on a shared KPI scorecard is one of the keys to success that I picked up in that sort of incubator environment.
That's really painful what you mentioned right now, because a lot of companies, they still have a leads like plan, and it's not it's not anyhow connected to ROI. It's not anyhow connected to the profits with the leads, and it's really painful to see that sometimes. So that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what's the case. A lot of people have some kind of tactics, but they don't have a framework. And your book offers to its readers, the framework on how to organize this whole thing. So lastly, for our listeners who are interested in your book and resources, how can they access them, and what can they expect to gain from the book, and what can it really change in a marketing professional, or I don't know, CXO or company owner? Anyone, please introduce that to us.
Absolutely, sure. So as I mentioned, I'm happy to provide a download to modernrevenuestrategies.com/free download. First 50 folks that go there, they'll get a free copy of the book in its entirety. It'll include calculators, templates, and then I'll follow up with some emails with videos to sort of deep dive into this sort of positioning strategy. I'll also provide some videos to sort of deep dive into how to grow without spending more money on advertising by really understanding the customer journey and then aligning messaging and content to that customer journey. That'll give you some really creative ways to grow without just spending more on advertising. But the main thing that people tell me after they finish the book or start to implement it is having these sort of scalable systems to bring the team around, so that instead of it being, well, you didn't deliver what you said you were going to do, it's, well, we worked together on creating a system, and then did that system deliver what we wanted it to? And if not, how do we get together to improve that system? So it really improves a lot of collaboration within companies and creates a lot of clarity on how to prioritize. Should we be looking at attracting more customers or activating the customers we have for more referrals, upsells, and renewals? And having a framework to evaluate those two things can be really valuable. And one of those things that a lot of companies tell us they really enjoy. As part of that, I'll also make this offer to all of your listeners. I'll spend 30 minutes, 90 minutes, really, if we need it, to do sort of an assessment of your current revenue growth systems. And I can audit and give you some of those benchmarks that I've seen for other companies of your size to let you know, is your biggest need in attracting more of the right customers, or in accelerating them through the sales pipeline, or in activating your existing clients for more renewals, upsells, and referrals? Help you create some priority there, help you see the fastest path to growth that'll give you some real solid benchmarks you can use in building out a marketing plan.
Yeah, so us marketing professionals, we can amplify the core values and the company's message, but we can't do it all. Guys, always remember that it's a teamwork. We have other people who can do incredible things. And thank you so much, Mark, for giving us this great offer. 50 first listeners, right? So guys, I'm so sorry, but it's going to be only 49 because I'll get the first one. So it's going to be only 49 for you guys left. Thank you. People love freebies. I love freebies as well. So thank you so much for being with us. This was a lot to think about. And I recommend reading Mark's book because it seems like something we actually need in this environment. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Anton. I really enjoyed the time.